lockdown came through in mid-March, and that's pretty much when the lights went out. So there was a massive sort of change from sort of early Feb through to mid-March. We got off to a great start. It was a highly candidate-led market, which has obviously swung now, whereby in theory we had lots of jobs and not enough candidates. So not enough of the right sort of candidates. So as a business, we have to cut our cloth in terms of what we do and how we manage our time. So in that kind of scenario, when we have lots of jobs and not enough candidates, we spend a lot more time on our networks, on our candidate development, on our database, on our research. And that's essentially what we did, because if you don't do that, you don't deliver. And I think we did that pretty well, but obviously that worm is now turned. And now it's very much a client-led market whereby we don't have lots of jobs and there are, in theory, lots of candidates looking. So again, we have to adapt our time and our time management around that. So I think in terms of a brief summary, that's exactly where we are in terms of just before COVID. Everything was looking good. We had a good team in place. I think we'd got the benefit of that sort of branding and BD through the year before and all those events. And then sort of the next phase was, you know, really, geez, how do we deal with this, and what's the world going to look like, and how do we adapt to something that's sort of changed massively? And that is sort of part one, really, in terms of where we are.
Yeah. Everyone who's listening, Richard is a man who loves stats, so very focused on that as a business. I hope you noted those down. So Rich, would you say the main challenge before COVID was candidates?
100%. Yeah. I mean, particularly in our world, I mean, within tech, within real estate, it's obviously a niche. And I look at our world in sort of strange term, really. I mean, it's essentially sort of almost an inch wide, but a mile deep. So you've got lots of skills, lots of verticals within that space, lots of needs and requirements, lots of different skills and abilities, particularly within, say, innovation, where, you know, we as a business get lots of different requirements and they're very niche. So these candidates don't necessarily grow on trees. And, you know, we're essentially looking for candidates that are highly in demand, being very well looked after where they are, and need a very good reason as to why they want to move from a business or a startup to something new. So that relationship and that trust between us and the candidate is really key. So lots of work around getting to know people, getting to understand what they do, getting tight with these guys, building that trust, and then just offering opportunities. Now, we can't obviously make candidates move, but what we can do is open the window and present the facts. And that's something that we do all day, every day. And that's very much how we were sort of managing our day pre-COVID. So building up really good networks within the core areas within tech. So you've obviously got back-end engineering, UI, UX, systems development, product. Then you've got the front-end BD, customer, all the sales side. You've got SaaS as a separate vertical. So getting sort of embedded in those areas and getting to know the best people in those spaces was pretty key. And that's still going to be key going forward. But there's going to be more of an onus on client development and business development to widen that job pool to make sure you're moving forward as a business.
Yeah, I know Brad and I spent a lot of our time at these morning events, evening panels, trying to get to know whether it's clients instead of candidates. Brad, like how, I guess for us, we've had to completely change direction of how we sort of generate candidates because there's still like a need. What would you say the immediate impact did the lockdown have on us for generating these candidates and I guess just the market in general?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was really interesting, wasn't it? Because obviously the first thing we had to do was reach out to clients and see what their plans were. You know, we were sort of fairly reactive in that instance. There was, you know, we weren't at a point of looking for new business at that point. It was just making sure that we can deliver and speaking to our clients. Inevitably, clients were taking stock of the situation, trying to work out what their plans were going forward. I think we were in quite a fortunate area. I say fortunate, but obviously we know it's a growth area that clients are still raising money. People are still looking to hire, and actually there's a diverse range of hires. So we've seen, you know, large institutions look for guys with business operation skills, understanding the technology, whereas the immediate startups, you know, potentially the vacation rental, they had to take a step back. So For us, it was challenging. It's sort of channeling, where we needed to look. In hindsight, we probably could have done it swifter. I'm sure everybody would take the time back again and have a look at how you can be sort of the best you can. But, it's positive again. I think there's some green shoots coming out of all that. And as a team, we managed pretty well. I think, myself, you and Rich, we got together daily pretty much, talking about the same sort of things, but we did the right sort of thing at the right time.
Yeah. I'd say the fundamentals are still there. It's all about sort of communication and keeping up with past candidates who are still candidates. Some of them turn into clients. We've done various placements there, but it's also, God, that there must be like a stat for the amount of what's the stat, Rich, that we have for the amount of more candidates we've generated from guys being sort of furloughed and made redundant since COVID. It's just risen hugely.
Yeah, I mean, Ludo, I love my stats, but I don't have that stat to hand.
There's been a lot of calls, is all I'm saying. We sort of sent out.
I mean, absolutely. We've had an increase, a huge increase in candidates coming through who, in many cases, are still working, but probably just feeling a little bit unsettled around where they're at or who they're with. They might be furloughed, might not be sure that they're coming back. Lots of sort of instances where candidates have been saying, look, I'm on furlough, but actually the communication's been really bad. I think the businesses that are really doing a good job right now, the businesses that are almost having sort of bi-daily catch-ups with their staff. Obviously, it's well documented, people are doing lots of webinars and lots of quiz nights and pub nights and things, but certain companies have been phenomenally bad at not staying in touch with their guys. And I think actually that will resonate and that sticks with certain people. And that in itself is driving some interest and activity in the market. So that's just fueling the candidate pool that we have, which just shows, again, we're going to have lots of good candidates who are looking, but actually not enough jobs when we come out of this. So again, we're going to need them in future. And as you say, Lulu, a lot of these guys are going to become clients. So we have to maintain that contact. We have to communicate with them. But also, we have to be honest. So we can't give people false hope. It's a case of being very clear about the market, very clear about what we can do and what we can't do right now. Because I think more than anything, the one thing that really annoys candidates is not being given the honest truth about where we are and what's happening. I think that's something we can all sort of learn from, in the sense that with these candidates, they just want to know where they stand. If the market's tough, or if we don't have a role, or if there isn't a role out there for them, then we just need to tell them. And obviously that changes, then we can let them know.
Yeah. I mean, going back to, I guess, on a client side, for those hiring managers or business owners who are listening, a lot of feedback I've had from candidates or even people within your businesses is just look after them, tell them how the business is going, reassure them, because even your best salesman or something like that, if there's no that sort of engagement, you're not sort of managing to hold up your culture, which is really hard to do at home. Like we struggle as LMRE and we do weekly sort of online drinks, which is quite lame and a bit boring now, but just maintaining that engagement with them is just so key to keeping, I guess, your team together. And that glue is fundamental, especially if you're early stage. Brad, could we go into a little bit more about what we've seen in the market and some sort of growth areas of, I guess, roles and verticals in PropTech?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we can sort of briefly go through the areas we cover. So in terms of geography, we see a big hub in sort of London, obviously within the UK. Germany specifically is a target area for us. There's a lot of growth there within the PropTech scene. This isn't exclusive, of course. There's big hubs around the Nordics as well. Also, Israel seems to have a big tech hub. There's lots of good funding there. Lots of companies, they use sort of Tel Aviv in the areas as their sort of testing and growth ground before they either come to New York, London, or one of those markets. In terms of the actual markets, we're still discovering it, I think, but what we sort of roughly break it down to is sort of, residential tech, commercial real estate tech, construction technology. There's also the huge innovation piece within the big real estate institutions and consultancies, an area that's only going to get bigger and probably the area that's going to see the most amount of funding as, the big consultancies, the big institutions understand that people need to work remotely, how AI can assist them going forward, and the areas that they need to spend their money in. So It's interesting, like I said, that the vacation rental market, that sort of travel technology area, we overlap that with property internally just because of the, the demand for the property. That's taken a step back. Who knows? It's probably ambitious to say that's going to come back this year, but 2021, you would expect to see a big rebound. In in terms of commercial real estate SaaS, I think there's a number of companies who spotted that.
Yeah.
You look at the Coyotes, the VTSs of this world, they're doing great things, and the institutions need those products. So we'll expect to see that to continue to grow.
Yeah.
And most importantly, the power brokers, I call them the power brokers, the VCs who are raising the money, putting the money into these companies. They want to see their investments continue to flourish. So fingers crossed they'll keep putting the money in, and the companies they'll keep growing.
Yeah. And for those companies that want to keep growing, Rachel, can you, and then Brad will obviously go to you, I guess, how has lockdown sort of affected the whole recruitment process? Obviously, we've recruited various professionals into startups and the consultancies over this time. How's it affected it? And then we can go into a little bit about onboarding. We've done the same for LMRE. We've had Lucy join us, and it actually wasn't as difficult as we thought it would be. So Richard, over to you.
Yeah, the change from sort of lockdown was obviously pretty stark. I mean, pretty much overnight we saw an 84% drop in our live jobs. So that pretty much overnight changed everything. And we still do a fair amount of business within what I would call the sort of traditional real estate space. And actually what was interesting is that the bulk of those jobs and the cancellations within those jobs came from the traditional space. The live roles that we had going into COVID within, say, the VC community and also PropTech are by and large still live. So they weren't actually cancelled. They were just either put on hold, or they were going ahead with perhaps a little bit less urgency than perhaps we were seeing beforehand. I think the big difference with PropTech and the VC world is that these companies, as they grow, they have investment, and that investment has to be put to use. So therefore, there is urgency, and these guys and this scaling will still happen, albeit maybe now at a slightly slower pace. So massive drop in live jobs, a big dichotomy of where those jobs were either pulled from. And I think the big effect there and the big sort of insight there was the fact that the traditional space, which is multi-layered, quite corporate, quite generic, has been hit very, very hard, whereas we see the PropTech space being less affected, and therefore will come out of this, I think, a lot quicker. And I think that the exciting thing for us here, and I think everybody in PropTech, is that I think this is just really going to speed up a lot of the change coming out of lockdown and coming out of this crisis, because people realize that tech actually will enable and change so much within real estate. I mean, real estate is the biggest asset class in the world. I think it's sort of worth something like 8.9 trillion, and yet it has to be the most antiquated asset class in the world. So that's why we're seeing all this investment over the last sort of 5-10 years. This is why we're seeing such exciting innovation come to the market, and why it's just going to be a growth area going forward. So, clearly as a business, we're tapping into that, but we just need to navigate this period, which I think will go on for sort of 3 to 6 months. I think that things are going to slow burn through to probably Q4. There is always going to be strategic hiring. We've got a good level of business on right now, but it is strategic and it is quite specialist. And that will sort of slowly ramp up from, I think, probably the autumn onwards. And we as a business just need to make sure that we're in the right place at the right time. All our guys are sort of fit and ready. We're sort of on the dance floor when music starts again. I think it's probably a fairly bad analogy, but I think that's important. I think that's what we're doing. We're sort of getting ready for an uplift and a bit of a push that I think will probably come more noticeably in the autumn, and then we'll push on through the back end of the year. I think in terms of onboarding, I think it's been brilliant. I think, everybody's had to learn how to do it. I don't think there's ever been a tool book for onboarding people in great numbers. I know we've learned a lot by doing it. I think poor old Lucy has been a recipient of a sort of a fairly loose process. But I think as a business, if you've got good systems, you've got good people in place and good communication, then you can get around most things. And I think, you know, that is sort of relevant to us really. You know, Lucy was great. You know, she was patient. The systems are in place, so that was sort of fairly straightforward. The training was fairly straightforward, which is ongoing. And I think everybody's had to basically feel their way a little bit into this space. And as we do more of it, we're just going to get better at it. And I think there's going to be lots more of that, because clearly there's going to be a lot more people working from home as that trend continues.
Brad, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously, you know, Zoom has become the new norm, where everybody's used to it. Everybody's used to poor connections, kids running in the background, all of those sort of things. So these sort of things are more acceptable, I've seen. And I think people are understanding and are actually just looking for the quality in a candidate. You know, we were quite fortunate, I think. I don't think we had actually any dropouts from sort of, you know, candidates to actually sort of falling out of that process. So by and large, the PropTech community that we've seen did very well in sort of handling that onboarding process. Like Rich said, there was a bit of a slowdown, and understandably, while people took stock of what they were doing. But yeah, people are just used to it. I mean, one thing I would say, I saw Fred there from Coyote just put a question about, you know, how does your network change when you can't go to events? And I think it's similar to the interview thing. I think people are coping. There's a massive amount of Zoom fatigue out there, and people, you know, chatting online. I think people are ready to see each other, obviously when it's safe and all those sort of things. But, you know, the interview process, I think, will go sort of semi back to normal. I think people will sort of more accept a first round interview will be a Zoom stage, and then it will come through to meeting the team. But, you know, I'd love nothing more to meet the team. I don't think I've actually seen Lucy in person yet. I'm sure, you know, there are lots of other companies that would like to meet all their new colleagues and sort of, you know, have a drink and sort of say hello. So whilst it's changed, I think people have.
We've lost Brad there. I think one thing which I can add, since helping some clients in North America and also in London, is the first process was obviously a couple of Zoom interviews. So the co-founders then with you know, the COO, and then they called me slightly concerned, as you would be, because you're about to invest in, you know, whether it's a good, you know, your head of sales or something. Before you take them on, you're like, they asked me, Lou, how can I check they're going to get along on the team? Like, is there a personality test? Like, how do I know they can actually do the job? And I was like, well, I don't think these are like bulletproof at all, but I'm like, you can get them to a personality test. You can get them with like an online Zoom, like drinks thing, but also just get them to do a little project. We've got there's a client which we're working on at the moment. They gave them a project where they had to generate a couple of clients. They had 24 hours to do it. And it was basically, they gave them a couple of potentials who they knew well, so they could just call them, just see how they engage with them. And they've hired 2 people from that process and were satisfied. So there's different like creative ways which you can test a candidate's ability. But at the end of the day, it's also got to be a client trusting in the person, but also hoping that the recruiter, LMRE, has done their due diligence to make sure they're good. Brad, you got cut off there. What were you saying?
I know, I was just finishing off saying, you know, like, we're all looking forward to seeing you again. And I think these tools will improve the recruitment process. They'll make it more efficient. It's definitely not going to replace that, you know, face-to-face contact. If anything, I think it's going to mean sort of, and we were starting to see it pre-COVID, more trial days, more informal meet. I think that's the way, as people realize that culture and people accepting the culture of work is almost more important than the actual qualification previously, you know, that team understanding. So that would be my guess for the future. Like I say, hopefully people are seeing the poor internet, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, everyone, Brad has recently moved up to the Midlands, so I hear they don't have internet up there. It's that far north. Maybe Widescored should get involved.
Yeah, we're pushing hard for 5G recruitment, so yeah.
But yeah, a question also came in about you know, where are we seeing sort of a surge in roles? And obviously clients now, with lots of budgets being cut to the left, right and center, they're really thinking about who they're going to hire, what what roles do they really need to invest in their business? And well, I'll just say, from my opinion, then Rich and Brad, go ahead. Good salespeople. Literally, they'd rather have 2 than 20 in their team than they did before, and they'll get rid of the bad salespeople in their team. I think as soon as people have the chance, it sounds so brutal to furlough people, and the process to make them redundant, they have done. But the good salespeople will be looked after, and our clients will continue to expand their sales team. It's fundamental to their growth for their business. Other, obviously, developers and engineers still hot prop in the US, UK, and to the Europe, and they're dime a dozen. Brad, are you seeing any other sort of trends in roles?
Yeah, I'd echo your saying. I think, you know, if you look at the successful companies of what we're seeing, they have a strong sales pitch, some people who have a good understanding of the market. People often ask about where the people are from. So especially in the SaaS businesses, for example, you'll get a mix of SaaS candidates and property candidates that, you know, understand the technology, but also understand the market. And then the other big one, and, you know, this is a new one, is just that customer success role. You know, if you look at a company now that wants to hold on to their clients through this process, it's pretty much vital that you have a strong customer success team. Not to mention how that can increase revenues. You know, I think there's some stats out there that, you know, most companies only get 20% out of their paying clients. So rather than fight for your new client, actually better to sort of make sure your first 1,000 people love you. I think it's actually the guy who owns LinkedIn said it, and it makes exact sense. Make sure the clients that you've got really appreciate you, and you are doing everything you can to work with them. Yeah, I can see that really working well. And then just, I don't know sort of what the official roles are, but feedback from clients will be very important. You know, what could we have done better in this process? What could we look to develop our product to make sure that we're ready for this next time for you? I think it's pretty important. Rich, what are your thoughts?
I think all of the above from my side. I think the tech enablers obviously key. I think the product has to be spot on in a tough market, but more than anything, I think fee generators are going to be worth their weight in gold. I think those guys are going to be everything in a tough market, and I think, and it's going to be the same in our world actually. People that can generate and strike up great relationships, build a great understanding of what's out there, partner with clients, and provide solutions are going to be golden. And the guys that just, I guess, have been transacting in the past are going to really struggle. So I think a lot of people in sales, and in our world particularly, are just going to have to upskill. And we saw that in the dot-com boom. I think there were lots of transactional people out there. Then obviously the market turned, and a lot of those guys fell by the wayside. That happened again in the financial crisis. But you know, if you get through these sort of crises, then you become a much better business and a much better individual or biller or fee earner as you come through it. So, you know, I think if you take a look back at all those sort of, you know, periods in time, then, you know, you've got to adapt and you've got to learn how to generate fees. And fees are everything.
Yeah. Okay, bro. Guys, let's go into sort of post-COVID, which I don't know if we even classified as post-COVID, but we're hopefully over the worst. Richard, are we seeing some green shoots coming through?
Yeah, I think we are. I think, as we said, you know, there is investment out there. There are some really interesting businesses and propositions out there that need to move forward. That, as we said, that money has to go somewhere. So from our point of view, we're working on some strategic hiring, and that's increased over the last 2 to 3 weeks. That gives us quite a lot of confidence, but it is cautious confidence. And again, nobody really knows. So we've spent a lot of time over the last 2.5 months looking at the business, looking at the structure, looking at how we work. Have we got the right systems in place? Have we got the right people in place? And making sure we're ready for that uptick when it comes. But in terms of jobs, they're sort of slowly picking up on a week-by-week basis. Traditional real estate, I think there's a few things now coming out of say, the consultancies. I mean, particularly one thing that I've seen has been quite noticeable has been asset management. I think in this market, really good asset managers are worth their weight in gold, whereas retail and the office market is just dead for obvious reasons. There's still a bit of work in some pockets of business in things like warehousing, logistics, and then obviously in the tech side of things, there's lots of work coming through. A bit more work coming from Germany actually, which is interesting. I think they're probably a month ahead of us, which is interesting. So that's sort of quite a good pointer for us as we come out of it. I think, you know, we're seeing a pickup there. New York, I think, is on a par with us in terms of where they are with COVID. So that's sort of a little bit sporadic. But, you know, funny enough, we did our biggest ever placement, our biggest ever fee last week in New York. So there is still life out there, but you've got to be in the right place to work it, manage it, access it, and transact it. So, you know, that's really what we're focusing on at the moment.
Yeah. Brad, you got anything to add?
Yeah, look, it's picking up, isn't it? I think as people are sort of chatting more, people are getting to grips with the new normal. People are understanding where they need to be, where the growth is. They've pivoted products in some instances and are looking to move forward. I don't think it's quite where we were, or it's by no means near where we were. But great that things are starting to move forward again. You know, it was a bit of people couldn't quite get their head around it in April, I think, understandably so. You know, everybody from home, whether it's children from home and all of that sort of stuff, unable to see your friends, family. But now people are understanding, actually, if you know, if this is what we've got to deal with, then we've got to, and if our clients still want us, then we need to make sure we're in front of them, we're working with them. So yeah, fingers crossed. From now until the end of the year, we can sort of get back towards some normality. That would be great.
Actually, yeah, just on that, I think it's been interesting. We've seen a number of businesses pivot over the last sort of few months, and, you know, pivot in the right direction for the right reasons. The smaller companies can do that because they're sort of nimble, whereas the bigger firms and the bigger consultancies just can't pivot. So I think they're just going to be stuck, and, you know, as they're sort of multi-layered, they're going to find it very hard to change into a new world and a different environment. So in a way, it's a good thing to be a small specialist business, because you can sort of redirect, reroute at any point, and we're seeing a lot of that, which is interesting.
Yeah, you know, just on that, I think that the companies that were sort of engagement space, you know, communication with your tenants, your landlords, you know, did all of the landlords, are they going to look back and say they managed it well? I would say not. And if they could have had that communication a little bit swiftly, that would have been great. And then, yeah, that's a huge area that people could have done better. And then obviously the physical infrastructure, you know, we're seeing a few companies pivot towards actually, you know, heat sensors, air quality testing. You know, people are going to want that. People, you know, I've spoken to people who are going to want that before they come back to their office. That's still very much property technology at its core, electrical technology,
Yeah, I sort of recently read that Equium have released a new product called Smart, and it's all about reassuring tenants and getting them safely back to the workplace. But that sort of crosses over into sort of our next question about expectations between candidates and employers. So I think it's like 2 months ago, Google and Facebook said they won't be having any of their team back to the office till 2021, which to me, it's shocking. I mean, I'm sure they're correct or whatever, they thought it through, but people want to go back to the office, especially sort of, well, just all ages as well. You want the culture, you want the sort of energy, but also that's where innovation happens, when, you know, you're working with your team, where you get sort of fresh ideas. What would you say, Brad, the new sort of expectations between candidates and what they want out of the new workplace is?
Yeah, it is exactly that. It is just that flexibility. If you know, the PropTech, that startup side of things was very much on the bit. You know, providing you've got a laptop and an internet connection, you can pretty much work anywhere, which is great. But like I say, I don't think it's going to change that much. People like that sort of office culture. You know, I think gone are the days, you know, where you travel across London or New York for that 10-minute meeting. But being able to meet sort of client or colleague that becomes a friend after a short amount of time, it's so important. So I think there's just going to be bigger flexibility, you know, that drive towards flexible working. Obviously, you know, the flexible office providers are going to have to provide, you know, sanitation and all of those sort of things, which are going to be really important. But yeah, I think effectively that sort of 3 days in the office, 2 days from home is going to be the new norm. Having said that, you know, in a good sales environment, I really enjoy being around the team. So I'm more than happy to work a little bit more in the office.
Yeah. I think there's a question which keeps sort of popping up, going back to sort of candidates and skills, which someone's just messaged me about, is the transition from real estate to PropTech, or just even technology, and you know, the differences in sort of environment. What, I guess, for me, a big thing which I educate a candidate from, say, a Jones Lang & Sell or CBRE who goes to a startup, is the ability to work on your own, using your own initiative to sort of get on with the day, do different sort of roles and be creative. What would you what sort of skills are sort of transferable, Brad, from real estate to the PropTech market?
Yeah, so we've seen this a lot, and there's a real difference. So we have companies come to us and they will say they either want someone who really understands the property market or somebody who understands the sort of SaaS implementation, and that goes across sort of construction, commercial real estate, resi. You know, there's guys who've been in those jobs for sort of 10 years, and they don't sort of realize how much they understand the nuances of how a big institution works, how a big construction company works, the actual problems they have, and they can speak the same. So, you know, similar to somebody coming out of JLL who goes to work for a PropTech company, they can go back to that PropTech company and say, I know what your problems are, and we have the solution to it, or we're actually building the solution to it, which I think it is going to be a real big help. Inevitably, those sort of roles do become sales roles or sort of customer success, or all around that revenue base. You know, it's very tricky for somebody to just all of a sudden become a tech genius, but you know, they understand their market. One thing I would say on that is, you know, candidates do need to make sure they are aware of the PropTech market, you know, what companies are doing well, why their product fits, how they could fit in, you know, different revenue streams. I think we used to see a lot more people go, you know, I want to come to PropTech because, you know, Property Week reported that 20 million had been invested in some company. That's not the way it is. You need to have a real understanding of the products you want to work with and how you want to sort of be a part of that team. You know, I'm sure we've all seen it. Those people that, you know, didn't quite have that understanding. But in fairness, lots more people are sort of working to have those understanding. And, you know, probably not this webinar, but other better ones will be far better at giving them understanding of the different PropTech solutions out there.
Yeah. Richard, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say it's just a case of education. I mean, we've got a fairly strong network within the traditional real estate world, and you know, many of those guys are just not right for, you know, innovative, fast-moving startups. But you know, we've had a lot of success placing, say, agents who are sort of good relationship type people, good salespeople, into PropTech roles, and that sort of worked out. I think sales is always going to be transferable. Things like research and data within the big consultancies and moving across is always going to be fairly straightforward. I think the big thing is generally sort of articulating the change in environment, because you know, quite often we have conversations with candidates who've moved into a smaller environment and, let's say, a startup, and they just haven't cut it. You know, they can't handle it. You know, they might have spent 5-10 years at CBRE and been supported and had, you know, lots of help, you know, lots of support around very narrow roles. Whereas, you know, in startups, you've got to do everything from, you know, stationary orders to building sites to, you know, writing reports, pitch documents, whatever. So, I think our job is really to educate what that step will look like and work out whether that individual is right for that step or not, because there is nothing worse than placing somebody into sort of a startup environment and then find out 3 weeks or a month, 6 months later, it hasn't worked out because the candidate didn't quite know what they were getting into.
I think I also would add in that it depends on the role. So if you are selling a product to a real estate consulting firm, that's like your target. For the business development or sales role, you need someone with that real estate experience. When it comes down to, say, Customer success, you can draw that in from any other sort of industry that's been focusing in, I guess, a similar sort of business, like the finance, law, hospitality, whatever it is. If you're selling a SaaS product, finding that balance in the team of someone who can obviously probably go to that meeting and speak that real estate sort of lingo, but then having that person who understands the SaaS sales process. So it's like also finding that balance, which I guess whoever the hiring manager is, you'll probably know from the get-go. But yeah, depending on the roles will depend if that real estate knowledge is really sort of necessary.
I think that, Lulu, just on that actually, I think it's worth pointing out that a really good, slick, well-organized interview process makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
And we see this again where, and I know it's difficult with founders, people that are moving really quickly, people that are running very quickly. They don't always and can't always manage a really slick, well-organized process. Things happen, things change, interviews get maybe changed and cancelled. But that is a reflection on the business. And, you know, quite often we see good companies and good businesses missing out on really good people because actually that process hasn't been managed particularly well. So I would say as a bit of advice, you know, if you're eager to hire, need to hire, and you've got somebody who's identified as potentially somebody who can add a lot of business, then what you do and how you manage that process is a huge reflection on your business. And that will go a long way to getting that candidate on board. So, you know, it's sort of frustrating when we know there's a good fit and then we get feedback from the candidate saying, look, I think they're great, but, you know, it's just been a little bit disorganized. And if this is a reflection of the business, then I'm not sure it's for me. So, you know, just little things can make a massive difference. And I think just being slick and being well thought out and organized around the process is a really good thing. And that is a bit of a signpost.
Yeah, I sort of feel that sort of interview process is slightly easier to follow now that we're all working from home and all have slightly more flexible diaries, I'd say. So with that, you can always put a 3-step process in, 2 Zooms, and like, well, it's a personality test and like a project. There was a question that came in that I thought was quite interesting from David Oates. Do you think the COVID crisis will drive consolidation or accelerate the thinning out of overcrowded areas of PropTech? Brad, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so good question. Very good question. And inevitably, like all good questions, it gets an answer like a politician, which is it's a real mix. You know, I think one thing I would say is the adoption of PropTech means there's still a huge market to go at. I'm still convinced that probably only 10% of the property owners, asset managers, institutions have actually adopted the tech. So there is going to be a huge market to go after. And I probably think that will actually increase the number of players within the market. Inevitably, COVID would have caused some issues with funding, with, you know, revenue generation, with companies' position in the market, and there will be some good consolidation. You look at the likes of MRI at the minute, the Altises, the Yardies, they're looking for complementary products to their businesses. And these guys are already starting to consolidate, you know, existing areas and make it their own or make it very difficult to challenge. Having said that, like I say, I think it's a very fast moving market and we are a long way away from having a product that fits every different solution. So let's see, you know, like I say, there's not an obvious yes or no answer to that one. But there will definitely be more M&As in the coming months, but also hopefully a lot of new exciting products.
Good to know what Dave thinks, actually.
Yeah, he probably knows more than me on this, so that's a challenge.
And there was a question from Luke as well. So our small business analysts, researchers typically benefits transition to PropTech, or, you know, are they prioritized higher or lower than, I guess, candidates from the larger consultancies or the bigger names, the bigger brands? I generally think it all comes down to, so if you've got the skill when it comes down to that, say the data side or the analytical side, culture fit, personality, that's what you'll be hired for, as long as you have the ability or use that sort of scale or data. I don't know too much about data, but that's the feedback I've always had from clients. Brad, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, again, it's a real mix depending on the company. I think, in a sort of guys from smaller consultancy sort of agencies, they probably have a greater knowledge and understanding of the PropTech market at this point. Um, Having said that, for a PropTech at this point, sometimes there's that sort of big name marquee signing, which works, sorry to use a football term there. But it does make a difference to have that somebody who's come from a big agency, a big consultancy that already has the large network that can just sort of transition very well. Um, but there's a mix, we're seeing lots of key hires across, from guys from fintech background and, other technology areas. But inevitably, if you've got a big name within the industry, you are sought after just because of your network, your understanding of the market.
Yeah. I guess I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to try and get through our sort of final questions. Okay, so post-COVID change. How Richard, how's it going to affect our approach to the business and the market in general?
I think from a LMRE point of view, we've sort of discussed that. We've had, there's been a lot of time to reflect on what we do, how we do it, who we have. Are we fit for purpose? Are we well positioned moving forward? Do we have the right team? Do we have the right tools? All those sorts of things are sort of in place. I mean, from our point of view, we're trialing a new phone system, we're upgrading the website, we're rewriting our training, documentation. I know all the guys are spending a lot of time out there learning about their specific patches, so they're getting fit in terms of what they're doing and their markets. And it's very, I guess it's hard to say, it's hard to say when things are going to really pick up. We've still got a few guys on furlough. We're desperate to bring those guys back as soon as possible, but we need the business case and the commercial case to do that. But I don't think we're that far away from that. I think we're literally a matter of sort of, 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We want to build Germany. So that's definitely on the to-do list. Zan in the States, he's sort of out there pushing it right now. So that's great. But I think when the bounce comes, it's going to be big. I mean, again, particularly within tech. So it's just about being prepared for exactly that when it comes about. I think the jobs are going to be the same sort of jobs and skills. I don't think there's going to be any big differences in roles and titles. It's going to be the usual sort of product, back-end development, so business development, SaaS, all the sort of usual roles. I don't think there's going to be anything different there. As we've said, I think there's going to be a big change in how people work. I think from a personal point of view, I think we'll adopt a sort of a hybrid model whereby there will be some working from home, but there will absolutely be that time and period when the business and team gets together maybe 2-3 times a week to discuss what we're doing, how we're doing it, where we are in terms of our budgets and our financials. And I think that probably is the right sort of balance. And I think Brad is right in the sense that we're a sales business and we all feed off each other. So we've still got to have that collegiate environment. So we just need to get that balance right. And I think everybody is probably grappling with, what does that look like and what's going to work for everybody. And I think we'll get to something close to what will be the correct model moving forward.
Yeah, I think probably quite a lot of you are wondering what are other businesses doing? What is the market saying in terms of hiring again and expansion? Everyone is sort of shooting for realistically sort of end of July, apart from those sort of key hires where it's the head of product or a COO or, that junior salesperson, but everyone's shooting for around end of July time. So if you're wondering what your competitors are doing, that's when they're going to start hiring again. Brad, have you got sort of anything to add to that?
Well, not really, just from an internal side of things, I see, I'm pretty optimistic about it, that I see a lot of growth from our side, not just in terms of the team that we're going to grow internally, but also the number of clients that we're working with, the conversations we're having already. That will inevitably lead to a good second half of the year, providing we do things right and we manage things right. The market is big. The market's going to continue to grow. There's a lot of positivity out there. Obviously, it's been, a funny old few months, to say the least, but we will, come out of it the other side. And companies will look to expand. The existing clients we have will see Europe as a big market, and Europeans will see the US as a big market. Not to mention, we've not even touched, the Chinas of this world and out that way. So we've got places to go, and we will continue to progress, hopefully.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a few target areas we're looking to expand, and also developing relationships further with different associations. Obviously, UKPA, I'm board director of. I haven't even spoken to half the members yet, and eager to learn more about the different products out there. We're looking at going more into sort of resi tech as well through the sort of UKAA, specialists in the build to rent market. And another area we're looking to understand better is the construction tech and sustainability tech space, which we see as massive growth areas, and finding specialists in those areas, and whether we're drawing them in from energy or construction. So that's also where we see massive growth in the future, but that's like a whole different world, which we're just slowly getting a grips of, but we've got plenty of time to do it. And also, what's next for LMRE? We have something exciting which is coming out in a couple of weeks, and that's not just our website, it's something else which we've been working on over the past month, which we're really excited for, so watch this space. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Rich and Brad, have you got anything to add? Or
No, not from me, Lulu. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and hopefully it was informative and useful, and we'll look forward to catching up soon.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for listening to me waffle on. Thank you.